after the meeting, if we had any questions that we wanted to answer to hopefully allay any concerns that residents might have related to the construction of this project. So for our board members, just so to recap where we're at, what we have before us is a request for a preliminary plat for this subdivision. This is the first step in this process. We have the preliminary plat, which outlines the location of the streets, location generally of the stormwater infrastructure. We'll also have the location of the subdivision lots. We'll have another step, which we already have additional information that we'll be providing this evening, which would normally be part of kind of the construction application, where we would show internally, where we would discuss the construction, the actual construction specifications of the streets themselves, the stormwater infrastructure, the detention basin, ensuring that all of that is built to the specifications required by the city, especially as it pertains to the stormwater infrastructure, which has to comply with our stormwater ordinances and our MS4 operating permit, which we operate on behalf of DNR. So we'll be covering that a little bit this evening, because we know that stormwater concerns are what's on the minds of both our aldermen and our residents. So what you have here is the full tract here, which is south of West Hampton, is the 45.9 acres. That's the total section that we're reviewing tonight. I also want to make sure that we realize that, again, that this site, I think many people refer back to, there was, I guess this was going to be another phase of an original development that was part of West Hampton. We're really starting over from scratch on this. So when people talk about there was previous detention basins, or there used to be 4 or 3, or we're reviewing this site as if it was a completely new development. All of the calculations that have been done by the engineers, all of that is being done based on the current site, the current runoff conditions from the site, and what our ordinance and what DNR requires to be contained on the site and then discharged off the site based on the ordinance and DNR requirements. So there's a lot of talk about what used to be. Everything we're talking about is current conditions, and how what the current engineering shows will actually improve. We'll show you as we walk through this. We expect this to improve the water runoff situation on the current site. So we'll go ahead and, Dave, if you want to move us on to the next slide here. So you can see off the southern edge of West Hampton, there's a current stub. And on that stub street, this new development, Whiskey Creek, will continue on into the new 101 home subdivision. And this will be the only access to the site. There is currently kind of a stormwater ditch that runs east-west underneath West Hampton that existed prior to this. Most of that ditch, as you can see, is off-site of the current property owned by Mr. Cannon. That ditch is water that's upstream to the west of the current development, or the current proposed development. Some of that runs off of the north side from West Hampton. But what we'll show you here as we talk about this development, the new development will actually capture the water here, and we will put it in a detention pond at the northeast corner of this site. There's been a lot of talk about the detention pond that's there currently. That is not the pond that will be the final product. That pond was I don't know that that was ever even an engineered pond, but whatever it was not built to specification, certainly not to the specifications that the city requires now. But the new pond that will exist at the northeast corner of this property will be built to the specification that will take the drainage of the 45 acres of this property, detain the water, and then discharge it out at an acceptable rate, ultimately lower than what we have currently running off that property now. I'll show you. Yes, we're not taking questions, and I just want to keep the integrity of the meeting by not having those done. But I will say this again, if you have a question, as soon as we're done, I would be happy to answer it for you, Mr. Williams. So Dave, if you want to go on to the next slide. So now we're kind of focused on the eastern side of the development, and that northeast corner, you can see where that detention basin is. And all those little marks all over the place, you can kind of see outlines of where the stormwater infrastructure will be going, and where we'll have curb inlets and area inlets, which will divert that water in totality to that detention basin, the newly constructed detention basin at the northeast corner of the development. There still is, there is currently, and there still will be that creek that will go, it kind of goes through the properties on the back of the West Hampton subdivision. I will say Mr. Cannon was very generous and worked with the city very diligently to try and see if there was a way that we could try and find a way to detain or improve the runoff of the adjacent subdivision through this development. Unfortunately, the topography and the fact that most of that creek is on the backyards of adjacent property owners, there really was no way we could figure out in getting any additional stormwater improvements wrapped into this development. But I do want to thank Mr. Cannon for sitting down and having that conversation with us and looking at those possibilities. But what we do have here is a newly engineered, newly designed, excuse me, detention basin, which we'll go through the numbers in a minute, will be designed to take all 45 acres of water, which is currently discharging off the property. It'll detain it in that basin, and then there'll be an outfall structure that'll be designed at different stages of the height of the structure to meter the water out at different rates. Even at the max flow, the highest capacity flow, the rate of discharge, however, still again, will be less than the water rate of sheeting that's coming off that property now, which is, again, will be an improvement to anybody downstream on Buchanan Creek from this property. Dave, can we go to the next one? So,
That's that stub. You want to go to the next one?
yeah, so this kind of just shows that stub again, and that this actually shows the elevations of this. So the berm, there's going to be a berm or a levee built there. The current levee, I don't know how deep it is, but we're expecting that you'll see it's going to be 12 feet deep. Essentially, we're expecting 10 foot of capacity with 2 foot of freeboard. So between the top of the outfall structure and the top of the levee, there'll be additional 2 feet. But once it hits the 10-foot mark, that's where we would expect the water to hit basically the top of the outfall structure. That's where the maximum amount of water flow would overtop essentially it's kind of like an anti-overtopping device. That would be the maximum amount of outflow you get from this detention basin. Before that, there are other orifices in the outfall structure that will allow smaller amounts of water out at different stages. And so that's how we know we're not going to see, huge amounts of water. It's built to detain that water up to a point, and as it gets too high, it hits other orifices, other holes, lets more water out, until it gets to a point where it might be too high, and then it just goes all the way into the big hole. And that keeps it from overtopping. I know there was some concerns about it potentially overtopping the levee. That's where the big hole is at the top, so that it never overtops the levee, ideally. If it gets to that point, we should all probably have a park and, start praying.
I thought there was emergency spillway. Isn't there emergency spillway?
That would be, that would be considered that. I think when that gets to that, I don't think that there's a typical.
Overflow?
Usually, I've not seen that on most of these. Usually that big orifice is the emergency, but we can talk to we can double check with the engineer. I don't know if there is one or not. I didn't see one on the design.
I thought it said it in there that was going to be an emergency spillway on the side.
Again, I think that top orifice is usually the one. We can talk about it. We can go over that again. We're going to show you this in just a second, Dave, if you want to go to the next slide. So what I think so what Mr. Kaiser, before we get to what Mr. Kaiser was talking about, so there was some conversation earlier about how much water is actually coming currently to Buchanan Creek. Of the total 45 acres, some of it is currently sheeting toward that small creek and to that sort of detention basin. There's 4.5 acres or 4.1 acres that is currently sheeting off the southwest corner. And then some of it's 10.75 acres is actually sheeting toward the southeast corner, which is going into the back side of the Huntington homes there. When this is constructed, all of this water will be contained and will, again, be metered out at a rate to keep, again, the amount of water and the rate of discharge less than is currently experienced coming off the property now. And then Dave, you want to go to the next property, our next sheet. And we know this because what we did is we had an engineer do some pre-construction peak discharge numbers, and you'd have to look at the total drainage areas there. So they've got the drainage area 1, 2, and 3. They did a 2-year storm, 10-year storm, 25-year storms. That's the pre-construction peak discharges of where the current amount of water, the current rate of current runoff rates, and the current discharge there. So the peak discharge that we would have, and again, that's if you add all those together, what you would see is the basin now. If you add all of those areas together, it's pretty significant. I thought we had the cumulative numbers. I apologize because
the pre-construction is 33 and after.
Well, it's the pre-construction is actually 4.52 plus 11 plus 33. The post-construction is 17.6, right? So we know that even if you're just looking at drainage area number 3, as Dave mentions, you got 33 cubic feet per second of water coming off in just a 2-year storm, coming off that water, or coming off that property now into Buchanan Creek. We know that after the basin's constructed, it's going to go down to 17.6 cubic feet per second. So what really is causing the flooding is not just the amount of water, it's the amount of water in a short period of time. We're going to see that water discharged at a slower speed into the creek to give that water to stop, hopefully slow and stop the flash flooding along Buchanan Creek. So that's where, and as you see there, it says high water elevation 603.9. So again, as that essentially says that there's 3.9 feet of water in the basin at that point. The elevation is at 600, so at 603.9 feet, so 3.9 feet of water in that basin. It'll be discharging water out into the creek at 17.6 cubic feet per second. If we don't have a basin there, if we did nothing on that property, that water is coming off there currently at 33.79 cubic feet per second. So
you know,
Our engineered estimates show us that there is a significant increase and a significant improvement by having this development improve that basin, detain that water, have it discharged out at a rate acceptable to the city's ordinances and to the DNR. And hopefully, you know, I certainly wouldn't promise a marked improvement per se, because there are a lot of tributaries and a lot of contributing factors to the flash flooding on Buchanan Creek, this certainly being one of them. But the construction of this project, we don't expect to make the issue worse. In fact, if these calculations are correct, which we seem to believe that they are, this should help in some way slow the amount of water going into Buchanan Creek during these storms. So, is there any, I think this is our last slide, right? With that, I don't really have anything else to show on our slides. I did want to make sure I answered any questions or any concerns of the board. And then, of course, like I said, after this, I'm happy to stay around as long as residents would like to ask questions or come up here. We do have sets of plans up here, so if residents would like to come up here and look at those and go over those with us, I'm happy to stay here as long as you'd like. So, and we would plan on having this on the agenda for the September 15th meeting. And again, this is just a preliminary plat. After that, the staff would still have to approve the construction plans, which we've already got, we've already looked at, reviewed. This is part of that, so it's essentially mostly done. Once the other conversations are done about, there's a few other conversations to be had. Eventually we'd have a display, or not a display, but a final plat that would still come before you to actually record and finalize that. Part of that would be, and I do want to thank you, Mr. Walters. I almost missed you. There was a question about the detention basin and who's responsible for upkeep and how it will be maintained. So if we can go back to the detention basin picture real quick. This was something that was kind of lost in previous developments and will not be going forward, in part because of the way our MS4 permit works and the way our processes are here, and because of our fantastic staff led by Mr. Lindsay. Our process states that before the final plat, they are going to have to provide us, we're going to provide an agreement that has a perpetual maintenance agreement that we will record, and we will have deed restrictions on this detention basin that says that it must be maintained as a detention basin in perpetuity, that the HOA, which will be established by Mr. Cannon and will succeed him in maintenance after the construction of this project, they will be in charge of maintaining this going forward. That detention basin will be permitted through the city. It is inspected on a triennial basis. Yes. And which, same thing we have in other communities, it's pretty standard. It's no different that you'd see in any community in St. Charles County. They will be required to mow it, keep it clean of any debris, keep the outfall structures free of any debris and orifices, and we have a stormwater manager, coordinator, whose job will be to inspect that and make sure that that operates correctly going forward. One of the problems we've had in previous developments is even when we've had a detention basin, we've had no such agreement. We've had no such recording of such agreement or deed restrictions. That is not the case in our ordinances now or in our process going forward. There will be no final plat dedication without those things going forward under this administration. So we can't sell a house until I get that.
Anybody have any questions for James? So just to be clear, the developers met all the requirements that the city has in place currently
At this point, correct.
for the approval of this preliminary plat.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I got a quick question, just looking at this chart you have here. It talks about the 100-year storm at 3.9 cubic feet per second per acre at 40 acres at 156 cubic feet per second. Maybe I'm wrong. If I am, I'm not afraid to admit it. But this room is 66 feet long, roughly. So it's going to take 12-inch square of water, 2.5 times the length of this room, in 1 second. That seems like an awful lot of water. And that's at a 100-year flood, 100-year storm. And a lot of the storms that we have here lately seem to be a lot worse. Hopefully the one that's coming up tonight is just going to be a shower. Another question I had is brought to my attention that along the north side of this development is where there's some runoff that can't be detained into this detention basin. Am I right or wrong?
Runoff from where?
From the north side of this development that backs up to the existing development that's there now. They said that there's water that runs down from, basically from Woody's along that property line that can't be put into that detention basin.
The only thing that would not go in that detention basin is, actually, do we have an elevation?
No.
Yeah, right here, go up to this one. So you can see some of the elevations here. So some of the backyards, there's some backyards, the very back of the backyards, there's a little bit that'll go in there, but that's what goes in there now. I mean, nothing that's new. I mean, it's the current existing grade. They couldn't change that, so they've got everything draining to these inlets as best they can, but without building a retaining wall on an existing creek or filling in an existing creek, I mean, there's no way to stop that water from going there. And, God bless Mr. Cannon for trying. He was willing to do whatever we asked, but that's his property line. That's not his problem beyond there, unfortunately. And beyond there, there's houses that back right up to that. And with the topography there, if you were going to build a detention basin there, you'd have to take those houses out. You'd have to take those houses out. The detention basin would have to go right up to the back of those houses. The houses on, what's the name of that, Sweet Gum? Not Sweet Gum. What is the name
Yeah,
of that?
Dennis, don't you remember probably 20, 25 years ago that Helmut Weber approached the city to remove a detention basin on the north side? And the city approved it.
Bob had brought it to the board,
Yeah,
said it was okay.
yeah,
And that's one of the reasons today we question
yeah. Can I see that?
everything, because we took the advice of the engineering and now it's biting us right in the butt.
Because these 3 larger lots, that's where the detention basin was.
Yeah, you can see back there behind my old house. And see, that was the problem. We took the advice of the engineer. Haunting us today. Like I said, it's been a long time ago. That's why I stress to the board, more so today than ever, to vote your conscience on anything and to really pay attention to everything that goes on. Because, like I said, we vote on some of the things we're not totally informed on. That's why this meeting's here tonight, because I think a lot of the board understands that there's a lot of stuff that we're not engineers, we do not understand it. That's why we ask questions. So it's unfortunate for Monty that it had to go this way. I think that, I've said it before and I'll say it again, I think the development's not a bad development. Our concern is for everybody that's downstream, because it's bit us in the ass in the past. We don't want it to bite us no more. The city's not getting any smaller, the city's gonna grow. And we just wanna make sure, without a shadow of a doubt, that everything, all the pertinent information that we get is factual. And granted, with the detention basins that were in there in the past, for this side of that development, it makes me wonder what engineering should change to make the numbers. Are they the same? Do they differ? We're removing stuff, so if the others were removed, well, even removing that one, you look at the one on the other end of West Hampton, there's one as you first come in, that's behind that guy's house, if you remember. I came to you and I told you, I said, this guy's wanting to fill in this, as he called it, a hole in the ground, and wanted to build a garage. And you went out and explained to him that if he filled it in, it's going to cause flood problems for all those people up there, and he would be financially liable for that. You know, to this day, you can walk up to it. I don't think you can grow bamboo any closer together in that detention basin. It is full of brushes and it's thick. I think a bug flies around it in fear that he can't make it through. There's so much brush in that detention basin. And it's not the only one in the city, there's numerous. So what do we do? I mean, we have to do something. Do we sit back and accept the responsibility that, hey, we screwed up in the past, and we're just gonna let all the rest of these go and get the citizens, you know, Troy, that's gonna be at fault? We're gonna have flooding issues and stuff because things that have happened in the past, things that have happened simply because of the lack of knowledge of, you know, like I said, we're not engineers. We're not. That's why we call in for different things. I met with Dennis and what was the other guy? I can't think of his name the next day.
One of our guys.
But, you know, I met with him the next day, Dennis explained it all. I understand a lot more now than what I did that night. But there's so many things that we have to.
Can I talk for a minute?
Yeah, good.
You know, the city puts out guidelines for us to design this stuff so that you will say yes. Okay.
I struggle to hear you on it, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
The city has requirements that we have to meet when we design subdivisions. This subdivision has met your requirements. We have exceeded your requirements.
I agree with you. I understand that you're doing that, and I appreciate it.
So I don't know where the problem is with saying that this subdivision is okay. I think what you really need to do in this particular area of town is look at the big picture. The big picture is a property much larger than our 40 acres.
Well, it's much bigger.
And that's where you're getting hung up because it all ends up in your backyard. This is a drawing. You may have to share a little bit so we can see it. But this is a drawing of the drainage area that comes down behind your house. We're not going to be able to correct this problem.
Showing the 40 showing the drawing, and they can see what water in my backyard looks like.
We're just talking about 300.
Well, I've got 258.
Right
You're fine. If there's 200, we marked that, 168 acres. That line, this line here is Caney Creek.
I am due.
This is our 48. We've got 48. We provided.
They don't understand this is what happens
And this is 158 acres.
when we get a big rain.
The drainage area.
I think they understand that. I don't want to confuse them with the fact that this is separate from us. What we need to do is we need to talk about stormwater and fixing the problems.
They make them bigger.
That's the point. Well,
There you go.
I would say yes.
Actually, what I'm trying to
But
say.
what are you talking about? So, you see what I'm dealing with here? You see what, you understand? 258 acres is going down to Caney Creek. Okay, you're dealing with water. This is your,
It starts way up
the only way you can correct it is to put attention on
here. We just
this.
want to do
Can you get a microphone on Monty just so we can hear what's being said up there? We can't hear it.
Does that deal with the subdivision?
Yes.
I know it's in the watershed.
See where we're at?
The subdivision.
We're making a point. If you give us criteria to design something, and we meet that criteria, the only answer we can get is yes. Now, if you don't like the criteria, change the criteria. I don't know how else to do it.
That's correct.
Now,
you can take it walk if you like.
that's the big picture. That's the big picture of what we're dealing with. And it's a hot topic because it's coming behind Dennis's house. It is a problem. It's your house. I will admit it. I'm not the problem. I'm part of the problem. I'm trying to correct our part of the problem. I've done that.
I understand, you're not, this isn't the bigger picture, I understand that. We're just trying to make sure that of all the faults we've made in the past,
That's-
we
that's-
don't make any more.
I get it. The
And
only
that-
way you
and that's
can
nothing
correct
to-
that, you're not an engineer, I'm not an engineer. I have to employ an engineer to put this stuff together. Maybe you need to employ an engineer and make sure that my engineer does the right thing.
And that's what
No.
we voted on to do at the last meeting, was to get another second opinion from an engineer of our own.
Well, have you done that?
We're at a workshop currently.
Okay. Well, but don't get me subject to new sets of rules. If you want to do it, set your lines out and let them.
But us asking for a second opinion from another engineer
Go for it.
to make sure that these numbers are correct and that our families out here and houses out there aren't going to get
I'm all
flooded
fine.
is
I'm
not a fault of ours by being elected by them. You can't be angry at us because we're trying to look
I'm
out for
not
them.
angry at you. I am frustrated,
Of course you are,
but it's because. of
but
what
so
I'm
is
trying to
everyone
do.
else out here.
I-
Because
I
they've
get
been
it.
dealing with this.
I get it. If I had water in
And
my
so we have a due
backyard.
diligence to look
but
out for them.
This is the problem. It's not.
The problem is all of it out there. The
Yeah.
problem is bigger. We can start with this and make
You've
sure.
given us rules to play by. We're trying to play.
And
by
we've
those
asked
rules.
now in the last meeting for a second opinion. I don't know why we had a workshop prior to having the second opinion. Because we can't trump any second opinion when we don't have it.
You're gonna get it.
That would be up to them. You were at the same meeting as we were, where we asked for that.
We have to abide by the purchasing laws, which say we went out to RFQ, we followed our 15-day posting, which doesn't expire until the 8th of September. So when we get those completed, we'll then review them, and they have to be approved by you at the September 15th meeting.
Correct.
And then we can then give them that information to go ahead and do that. And we'd have to have a budget amendment to pay for the additional cost of having the engineering done. And then that would be the.
I mean, paying for the cost for an additional engineer is minimal if it saves
I get
the
it, but I mean,
homes
it still
of
has
people
to-
that are
it's not
here.
budgeted, so that's, it is not a determined cost at this point, so I don't know what that cost is. I mean, the law says we go out to RFQ. The law says we post it in the paper for 15 days, which we've done, which doesn't expire until September 15th. So all of that is still going on right now.
Correct, and that's what I'm saying. I don't know why we're having this.
Because the
When what we
Alderman requested-
voted on wasn't done yet.
This was at the request of the Alderman, so.
Not I, but when Monty is asking that, and I'm telling him,
I don't
the
have a
reason we're
problem-
having this is I
I don't
don't
have a problem
know.
with having this meeting. The problem I have, it should have happened before last meeting. We got postponed. because-
Planning and zoning didn't have a quorum though for
Yeah,
you.
that's true, it did. I understand.
So that, it
But-
unfortunately
But
went,
to keep postponing
it should have went back to them.
Is not where we need to be. We need to get to where we're making decisions. I think it is your all's responsibility, being on the board, to educate yourself about this. Now, this is a good way to educate yourself about it. I'm not an engineer. There's a lot of subjects I don't know anything about. But you're in a situation where you're going to get hit with a lot of different subjects. You need to educate yourself about those. And hopefully it's before it hits the Board of Aldermen's meeting. So that when it gets there, you have a knowledgeable background of what you're going to vote.
5 years ago, before you purchased this, I believe I met you out here too, this time. And Dave and Marie, and we found where the water was cutting through ditches and the retention ponds are broke up, and your company came out and corrected all that. Did that help control the water behind your house? I know it's all much up again now.
We haven't had the massive rains we've had in the past. It's really odd because that creek can come up in a matter of seconds, it can fall in a matter of seconds. But the strange thing about it is if there's any pause in the rain as it's coming down, affects it tremendously. It affects it tremendously if there's debris in the creek, whether this person does that, this person does that, whatever. You know, because there's so many different properties that back up to that ditch.
But at that time, that thing had water run everywhere on it.
Yeah, like I said, I've been there, stood on the top of it, water's running over my feet as it's going over the top of the lake. Another concern of mine is the ground, the property next to it. I guess this is just gonna drain on his property, or, I don't know, I'm just asking. When it comes out of detention, where's it go?
It just starts, it goes into that drainage area.
Do what?
It goes into the drainage area where it's going
I
out.
don't know, I don't ever go back there, so my property.
We're piecing the problem, and we're trying to work with our piece of the problem. But, you know, we can do a lot of things on 40 acres, but you can't overcome the other 260 that we do.
It looks like this plan will reduce the runoff by about half. I mean, it's gonna cut it down from 30, almost 34 to 17. That's a significant improvement. So if we can improve this 40 acres, then we can start focusing on moving forward. It's not right to hold one developer hostage on these 40 acres when there's 250 other acres out there that they're causing the same issues. So.
Well, I think the other thing to keep in mind is we're only at the preliminary plat stage. This is not, we're not even at the stage yet where we would, finalize this plat or we would record it. So there's still another bite at the apple, so to speak. Typically, this stage would be a consent agenda item once they've met the criteria for preliminary plat, which he has met all the criteria. This is what we would call a ministerial act. You've met all the criteria the city requires. You're more or less rubber stamping it to the next phase, which is this phase, which our staff has reviewed and is ensuring that it meets the MS4 requirements. If we wanted to add the additional scrutiny, which we've talked about, which we are, that unfortunately is going to take a little bit of time. Hopefully we'll be able to get that on board after the next meeting. Once that has been satisfied, we can give construction approval to go forward with construction of the improvements. And then, of course, again, all of the requirements for the HOA, the agreement to have perpetual maintenance of the detention basin, all of that will be part of the final process when they record the plat, and then they can sell lots for after construction. So this isn't the last time you'll see it, but and this isn't the last opportunity we have to say, wait, we have other things we want you to do, or things need to be changed. So if the engineer, an outside engineer, would have to come back and say, essentially, that they don't meet the standard, which right now they far exceed the standard. So that's a pretty high threshold that this engineer would have to be off for us to be able to say legally, no. This isn't a rezoning. This isn't a discretionary item. It is zoned for this. It meets the requirements of the code. If we want to change those things, if we want to have less density, if you want to have less impervious surface, if you want to have less homes, if you want to have less streets, we need to change all of our codes. We should be talking about that as part of the comp plan now anyway. We should be talking about that as part of review of our planning and zoning process. If we don't like this, we need to change that, and we have to do that before somebody comes in and drops $2 million on 40 acres and then puts a plan before us, because that becomes legally problematic. So.
It's like I said, Monty, I think what you're doing is great. I think the development was good. Our biggest concern was this. But it goes, you talk about much farther about educating yourself. Most of the board doesn't attend the P&Z meeting. I was told in October of 2022 we're not to be involved in day-to-day operations, and we're basically here to make legislation, and that's it. And it's hard for us to make a decision on stuff when we're kind of stifled from the get-go that we can't get in to find out this information sometimes. Now, I talk with Dave a lot, and we go and we go through quite a bit of different things. And like I said, it's just that it's hard for a board to make a decision sometimes when we get our board pack and have to turn it in by Wednesday. We get it on a Friday, then we got to make a decision by Monday. And sometimes that just doesn't work. You know, and it's sad, it's not your fault. I'm not saying it is, it's not. You know, it's unfortunate what's taken place so far. I'm not gonna say it isn't, it is. You know, when Dennis sat down and explained it to me, I understood it a whole lot more than I did that night. And I thank him for doing that. You know, it's one of those things that when you look at the entire picture, and it's just not me because my yard backs up to it, I mean, my neighbor Ron's, we're both right there. And there's a bigger picture, a much bigger picture. You go down even where Mr. Williams lives, where they had to put in a pump because every time the creek come up, it flooded a numerous amount of homes. So they had to put something in there. When Kiwanis Park was done, and you guys worked on that diligently up until the time it was done and did an excellent job. It looked great. We questioned about some of the elevations then. First big rain we had, and to the best of my knowledge, I haven't been out there for the last couple of years because I can't walk it. But it was destroyed by the water. So like I said, water is really a big issue. And I said, please don't take it personally. I understand why you do. But I guess it's just bad timing. For you.
When you're given a set of rules to play by.
You're given the rules and you're abiding by them, and I understand that.
It's hard to take.
And it's hard to swallow. I know that. I've been through it myself. But, yeah, like I said, I really do believe it's going to be a good development. I really do. I just hope.
Is there any questions out there that we would get a no? Does somebody have a no? Is there a reason why you would vote no?
Why what now?
Is there a reason right now why you would vote no on this project? And if so, why is it?
I want the second opinion of engineering to make sure that the water is going to do what you're saying it's going to, not you, but your engineer is saying it's going to do.
And if they do?
If it backs it up, then that's,
That's probably not going to happen by the next board meeting.
No,
Or another month.
unless we have a special. If the
So you alluded to maybe the preliminary plat gets approved next month, and then after that, we could still have a chance to look at those numbers, so it wouldn't slow things down if we could get that approved September 15th and get our engineer on.
Technically, by our ordinances, we shouldn't even be discussing this at this level.
Right.
I mean, we provided you more information than our ordinances require for approval at this level. Preliminary plat does not require construction plans, attention, all of that at this level. It's a general location of where these items would go. It's not until construction phase where the capacity and all of that stuff is really scrutinized, and then all of that's finalized. The HOA, perpetual maintenance, the dedication, all of that will be done at the final plat stage. So we've given you a little bit more information. We know it's obviously a hot topic, which is one of the reasons why we want to try to delay those years up front. Which is why some of this information was provided up front, so that you understood that this was going to be an issue that was addressed up front. But unfortunately, I think maybe all it's done is created more fears up front versus allowing us to move forward with this preliminary approval.
No, this may sound a little odd, but I know there must be a pretty good consensus of the citizens that this affects out here in the crowd. But we don't always have a large crowd, and this could be misconstrued as one of the, to let these people speak and actually voice their opinion. It's kind of, we hear from them, different people hear from them, but this gives them the opportunity to speak.
Well, there'll be a public comment at the 15th board meeting, September 15th board meeting. I've personally spoke to a half dozen residents, and I continue to stay this evening, as long as residents want to have a conversation about these, technical questions, so. But I think it's important to remain focused on the proposed development. The issues that have arisen about general stormwater concerns, I think are valid, but that is a different conversation for a different day. I think it's a conversation that this board maybe should take the leadership on scheduling a conversation about, but to have that conversation in the terms of Whiskey Creek subdivision, I don't know that we get there, because it is a much larger problem, I think we understand. And it is going to be a very costly solution. But I think if this board wishes to have that, then maybe that's the next work session discussion that we have. Because that is a perennial problem that predates this development and many of us here in this room. So I think that if that's this board's strategic goal, I think let's do that. But I think we have to make sure that we keep that conversation focused away from conversations about Trojan Lake and such. It does not necessarily have a conversation about this Whiskey Creek subdivision, which I had many of those conversations recently. So,
Anybody else have any more questions about Whiskey Creek development and the plans that we presented, the numbers that were here tonight?
Yeah, I do.
This is for the board.
Oh, here we go again. What's the public get to speak?
Yeah, this is a workshop for the board to get educated on what they're going to do.
Yeah, there's some things being left out that need to be brought up concerning with this project, not just necessarily with the runoff, but in a backward way, yeah, it will affect the runoff. And Dennis already touched on it.
So
I live in a house that has the grinder pump that the city pays for.
We're going to have the public comment period before the next meeting, where this will be voted on. You're welcome to speak to him.
Yes.
We're trying to set up a workshop to assess overall water problems.
So before the next automatic meeting is what you're saying?
Prior to the next meeting, that's on September 15th, there will be public comment period.
That's Monday, the 15th?
Yes.
Question. Does it say somewhere in our ordinances or policies that the public cannot speak to us at a workshop? Because it seems absolutely ridiculous that our public that is here cannot speak to us before we're going to vote on this on Monday. They're going to come to us 5 minutes before a meeting and then we're supposed to vote on it? That makes little to zero sense when we can't educate ourselves.
there was no public comment portion put on this agenda. You're welcome to set your agendas however you like. This was a requested workshop by members of this board.
And in prior workshops, it hasn't been.
Ma'am, I was requested by board members to have a conversation with board members about issues on here which they felt were technical in nature, that were not explained or were clarified previous to the last meeting. So that's what we did. I also took the affirmative opportunity to reach out to numerous members of the public who came and spoke at the last meeting to also have these conversations, even before we were having them tonight, to explain these issues and to listen to other concerns that are expressed.
We had 2 people speak last time.
And I spoke to many more than that. So my point is, there's nothing that says a resident can't speak to you anytime. I sat on a board of Alderman for 16 years. I didn't have to wait till I sat behind the dais to be heard by my residents. So I think that there's an opportunity there. There's always an opportunity to hear from the residents. They will be able to speak to you before you vote in the next meeting, if you'd like, or in the interim. If we wanted to have a town hall, we can have a town hall. It's up to you. But that's just not what was requested by the alderman at the time. I was requested to put together some technical information to have a conversation with the board members. My offer to the residents to sit down and have a conversation afterwards was so that we could have a conversation about these technical issues, not to have people air all of their grievances. I've had my door open and had plenty of those grievances aired in the last 2 weeks. And that's fine, that's my job, I'm happy to hear that. But we're trying to keep focused in this meeting on this issue. And I think that's what the purpose of, again, this agenda, the way it was structured tonight.
So then for future reference, if Dennis calls for another workshop, or I do, or Alderman Huffman, or Quentin, or anyone, if we want the public to be able to participate, we need to clarify that ahead of time, that they're allowed to speak to us.
Well, I
Because
think,
Dennis, did you realize that when you requested that they weren't going to be able to speak to us?
Well, there's a whole bunch of stuff on that, whatever form it is we gotta fill out, that brings up a whole bunch of things that I don't understand. One, at the last meeting, you looked at stuff on there. James had stuff on there that didn't require a second signature. Jeff had stuff on there that didn't require a second signature. You know, different departments up here had stuff on there that didn't require a second signature, but we have to have a second signature to put anything on the agenda.
And again,
I'm
you're
getting more
saying,
confused every day.
but you're saying they can come and talk to me alone. Great, they have. I've talked to many of them.
okay,
Wouldn't it be better for them to be able to address 5 of us at once than 1 to 1 to 1 to 1 to 1 to 1? And then come to you, you don't vote, we do.
I understand that.
So even if your door is open, that's wonderful, I love that.
Any board meeting. Right.
No, this is a public workshop. It's absolutely asinine that they can't speak to us.
Alderman, if you like, we can set it up as a public workshop, but we didn't set it up that way. If that's what you would request, that's fine.
Then perhaps you should have asked us if that's what we wanted,
But that's-
instead of assuming that we did not.
Okay,
We're gonna have to-
Alderman, that is, I put this together what was requested by the Alderman.
Again,
Okay?
when I just asked him, he
So-
said he didn't realize that. Why wouldn't you ask him that then?
This has changed quite a bit from the initial request. But again, this was a an opportunity for the developer, myself, and staff to provide, again, technical information that was not clear to the board during the last meeting, when you had an opportunity to vote on it. And my understanding was that the board did not understand the project that was before you. So obviously, having it publicly gives an opportunity also to educate the public. But again, the request was to help educate and inform the board of these technical questions. So if you want to have a town hall, again, that's a different type of meeting than having a technical discussion with the board. If you want to have a town hall meeting, that's fine. I mean, you guys can have town halls and have somebody come up here and moderate, and that, you know, may or may not be fruitful, but you're welcome to have those. But that's still a different conversation.
So is Monty not considered the public because he was allowed to
He-
speak up here?
he is the-
And Mr. College got up and spoke to him,
He-
and the gentleman in the
Okay.
second row spoke. And you
he's the-
shut down the gentleman in the back row.
He is the developer who has an application before the city. So he is obviously here presenting his
But
application.
it's either or, not both, like, you
That-
can't have it both ways.
No, that's how it works in every city in
That
Missouri.
gentleman you let
Okay?
speak,
I did not
you-
let him speak.
you
He
absolutely did.
spoke to me.
We need to pull this back in, and
Okay, I
You
know I'm
absolutely
speaking.
did.
I'm gonna ask the board to have some decorum in this meeting.
Let the public speak.
This
We
is
are
a-
elected by the public.
Please,
I
be
think-
respectful in your comments.
I am being incredibly respectful.
Okay, so in a workshop,
Probably the best,
hold on just a
hold on, I
second.
was talking, let me finish.
I have
I
a,
think that probably the best solution to this is whenever we have one of these workshops, is that when the 6 of us come in, or 7 of us, and whoever's involved out here, and just lock the public out.
Like, it makes no sense
Because if they
whatsoever.
can't speak, there's no need for them to be here.
You can have whatever you like, but you have to speak up and say that. To say that you don't know how to use the RPA, everybody on this dais.
No, it's not a policy that we use it anyway.
So it is a policy that
Yes,
you
it
passed.
We did not pass it.
It was a consent agenda that passed unanimously
so workshops are
several
just
months ago.
clearly stated, workshops do not involve public comment. This is a
That's
workshop
not
to
true.
educate the people.
That's not true. State law
This was
says,
this was
state law says
Sir,
that a
sir,
Missouri
sir.
fourth-class
You
city.
have the floor, let me finish. We put this out as a workshop. It was a workshop to educate the board members on a project that was before them, that they had to make a decision on. If you want to have a public forum, a town hall meeting, then you can set up a town hall meeting and invite the public to speak. But you cannot just open the floor up.
That is not true according to state law, and you know it. You know it. I'm looking at it right here. I'm looking at it right here.
We will ask you to leave if you cannot stay.
Yeah, and then I'll sue you.
That's fine.
Did we not follow
You have
state
been
law?
violating the law for a long time. You cannot,
Does the board?
you cannot stop a citizen, a taxpayer, from speaking at a workshop. That is a state statute, and if you could read, you'd look it up.
Does the board have any other questions concerning Whiskey Creek while we have
No, it's
James and
actually-
Dave and the developer here?
I would like to apologize to Mr. Cannon because this is going to extend it even further, because now we're gonna have to schedule a town hall meeting because they won't let the public speak to us. Which is incredibly disappointing for the builder who's trying to get things moving, but we can't do that because you won't let the public speak.
I thought this meeting was for technical questions, that's why I'm here. I'd like to talk to the developer then. If we're not going anywhere, let us just talk with the developer, we've got a technical question.
When the meeting's over, you can stay, and James and the developer have both been gracious enough to say they'll stay and answer any questions.
But then I say we make a motion to adjourn so these people can talk.
I have a motion to adjourn on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second.
Quentin Laws, Alderman Laws has a second. Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Huffman? Yes.
Laws?
Yes.
Dieter?
No.
Duner?
No.
Horner?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.
All right, does anybody have anything they would like to say? Speak up.
Come on, do we want to come over to the table? We got the plans up here.
Yeah, let's go.
Well, I don't know, they want to zip it up there. You get the medal for being the best behaved. You want to go for it?
I'm ready.
Did that answer your question though? I appreciate you writing it out.
You know, the mayor made an
Cannot
interesting
keep
point.
people from talking in a workshop.
The mayor said we should not hold,
That's a state law, it's a state statute. He does
and the
not
mayor's
follow
right.
state statute.
The problem lies in the past several years when the city board, not this board necessarily, but the
Violated the
city
sunshine
board,
law.
who was elected by the taxpayers,
He can motion to
refused
do
to
what he
listen
wants
to our concerns and did nothing
You
about the
try and drag me
process.
out of here, and I will
And now it's
take
come back
action
to
against
bite you all in the butt and bite him
But I
in the
don't
butt. My suggestion is from
this
this
shit's
point
gotta stop.
forward, if you
This
allow
man's
this
here
to
as a
happen, that's fine.
has
You need
stalled
to
out
do something
because
about
of
the
that man.
overall problem. You need
Yeah,
to step
this
up to the
bullshit's
plate
gotta stop.
and get something done about the whole 258 acre property, because we're tired of being flooded out.
That's fucking absolutely ridiculous. Like, this has to be the most asinine, clown fucking shit I've ever been involved in my entire life.
Well, I'm right.